What is a hypothesis? If you have taken a science class, you have no doubt heard the term hypothesis. What it is not is just an educated guess. A hypothesis is a testable statement about the natural world. There is a difference between just a hypothesis and a question. For example, you might ask the question, are all swans white? With a hypothesis, you will use what you already know to make a statement. For example, all swans are white. As scientists discover their hypothesis not to be exactly true, if it is falsified in some way, they will modify it. For example, we find a swan that is not white. Our assumption now is, what if it's the season? So we can make the statement, swans are only white in the summer. What you will find if you dig further is swans could be other colors based off where they live or what season it is. When we talk pattern versus process, we see that patterns are observable events. So like, for example, a plant wilts when it is not watered. Over time, we've noticed that that happens because plants require water. A product is the result of a pattern. So we see something happening because this pattern continues to happen. Why does the plant wilt when it is not watered? That leaves us with the question to probe. Theories and laws work in a similar pattern to pattern and process. A law is a repeated pattern, observable events that happen over and over. For example, gravity, it tells us what happens, what exactly does happen. See, a theory, on the other hand, it's an explanation for how or why something happens. We're actually attempting to explain why something happens. It's usually, it is unobservable. It's based on inference and deduction, and for example, the theory of evolution.
In science, we are talking about a process, not just some steps. We want to change our overall way of thinking. So I'm going to give you a step-by-step method, but on the next slide you will see that it is much more than just these steps. I often group the first two steps together. They are ask a question and do background research. In these steps, we are intrigued by something and try to find something more out about them. So we use all the material that we already know to expand on this precursor knowledge. From this, we move to stating a hypothesis. We have already spoken about hypotheses. We are making a statement that is testable. Every experiment should start with a hypothesis. We want to measure something that we expect to happen with what actually happens. This is how we learn. From here, we move to the experiment. From the experiment, we observe results, record data, and conclude. All of these come from what happens in our experiment. This moves us to our last step. This one's often forgotten, but it is that we share our results. Science is not done in a vacuum. Much of the advancements in science have happened because we build upon previous findings from other scientists. We must always remember that. In a future chapter, we are going to find out about a man who kept his discoveries to himself, and it literally put science on that particular topic at a standstill. But once he released his findings, a whole new world was released quickly. Before you come to class, I would like for you to study this last slide that I have made available to you. We'll talk about it further in class, but this is more like what the scientific process would look like when we use the scientific method. It just gives you some flowcharts, and I just want you to look through this, and we'll talk about it more in class. The method that we use for testing our hypotheses is very fundamental to science. The term experiment is a word that you've heard, and experiments are going to be part of this class that some of you look forward to the most. The definition we give is that an experiment is a scientific procedure undertaken to make a discovery, test a hypothesis, or demonstrate a known fact. A controlled experiment tests only one factor at a time by using a comparison of a control group versus the experimental group. The variable is the thing that we are testing in an experiment. It is the thing that actually changes. We need to be careful that we are only testing one thing at a time. There should only be one question that is being asked through an experiment. The control is everything that remains the same. So anything that is not part of the variable should be controlled throughout an experiment. We will conclude this video with 2 scientific method songs. I want you to pick which one you like the best, and then if you can write and record your own, then I'll give you extra credit for it.